We ride at dawn. Hello, little enzymes. Welcome back to Dacia's Digest. I didn't think of a topic, like a title for today's video, but they both stories have to do with pregnancy. So I guess that's the topic. Before we get started, I want to say I filmed this entire video and then realized that my mic was not plugged in. So there's no audio. So I'm doing it again. Typically, I don't fully read through the stories first before I film because I want my reactions to be like actual genuine reactions. So if you don't get as many reactions, that's why. But I will give like my commentary along the way. And another thing, please just bear with me. I know my posting schedule has been a bit all over the place recently. It's probably going to continue to be a bit all over the place. I'm actually preparing to do a really big move soon within like the next month and a half. And it's also been getting really busy at my job recently. And then there's also like other personal things happening, but no worries. I am committed to getting a video out every single day for you guys. Now, some weeks it might be 6 videos instead of 7. I might miss a day here and there, but I'm committed to be as consistent as I can. So the Q4 may be a little bit rocky, but we gonna figure it out. So I think that's it for the church announcements. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All of the story links will be included in the description, and let's go ahead and get into it. So, first story is, am I the a-hole for unintentionally getting a midwife fired? Now, I'm going to say this story really grinded my gears. There is a trigger warning for medical malpractice and also false harm accusations, and we'll go ahead and get into it. You might have heard of it already. I know that another channel already covered it, but we will cover it because this is not another channel. The original post was August 21st, 2024, and here we go. It says, throwaway for anonymity. This also happened a few months ago, but I've recently been told I took things too far. I'm active duty military. My wife and I began trying for a baby about 2 years after we got married, and after a few months, she got pregnant with our first child. About 6 weeks after she found out, I was deployed for a 6-month stint. Sadly, that meant I would miss all of her OB appointments except the very first one to confirm she was pregnant. Early in her pregnancy, she decided using a midwife would give her a better birth experience, and I was totally on board because she's the one giving birth, and I wanted her to feel 100% confident in the people assisting. It had also been decided that the people in the room, aside from medical staff, would be me for obvious reasons and one of our mothers. My mom lives about an hour by car from the base I'm stationed at, while her mom lives a 4-hour plane ride away. Ideally, her mom would be able to get there in time, but she loves my mom too and was okay with her being there if labor went fast and her mom couldn't make it in time. Fast forward to me getting back from deployment and her being really close to giving birth, like due in a week close. She was supposed to have an OB appointment that I would be able to go to, but ended up going into labor very early on the morning of the appointment. We go to the civilian hospital and they confirm she's in active labor. I called her mom, who immediately booked a flight that would have gotten her here at about noon. Then my mom, who came to the hospital a few hours later. A while later, the midwife comes in to see my wife and was rude from the start. My wife told her I was back from deployment and she calmed down a little, but was still clearly not happy I was in the room, especially once I started cracking jokes to try to distract my wife from the pain of the contractions. Then the midwife glared at me and told me to take this seriously and have respect for my wife while she's in pain. I thought her hostility was weird, but was more focused on my wife and doing all I could to support her. As it got closer to noon, my wife was almost 9 centimeters dilated, and so I decided not to go pick up her mom from the airport and had her take a cab instead, so I wouldn't have to leave for over an hour to drive to the airport. When her mom did get to the hospital, I left the L&D floor briefly to go downstairs and pay the cab driver so her mom wouldn't need to. L&D is labor and delivery, just in case anyone didn't know. As the cab is pulling up, I got a call from my mom telling me the OB and midwife were there and the baby was coming fast. The OB is the doctor delivering the baby, also just in case anyone didn't know. He says, of course, I rushed back up there after tossing some cash to the cab driver so her mom and I could be there for the birth. When I got back to the floor, my mom was in the waiting room since she had to step out to make the phone call and also knew she would be waiting outside. I used the intercom to ask to be let back in, and to my surprise, I was denied entry. They said they had an order to not let me or anyone in to see my wife. That was really confusing, so I asked why and was just told I wouldn't be let in and not to tie them up on the intercom or security would be called. So the three of us waited outside since my wife didn't answer her phone and she was actively pushing our baby out. Well, over 2 hours later, she was able to call me back and asked where I had been. I told her the hospital staff wouldn't let me in, but I had been in the waiting room trying to get answers for almost 2.5 hours. Long story short, it was the midwife who told the desk staff that I wasn't to be let back in. She lied and said my wife had reported I was harmful and she didn't want me there. So not only did my poor wife have to give birth alone and without me or her mom there for support, I missed the birth of my daughter. It meant a lot to me to be there to see my baby come into the world because I missed so much of the pregnancy, and that was ripped away from me because this awful woman didn't like that I never showed up to a single appointment the entire pregnancy, despite being told by my wife that I was deployed. Now, listen, imagine you're fighting for the country. Let's put all of our beliefs about what the military or whatever aside. You're out doing a job, making money for the family, fighting for other people's rights and freedoms. Unable to be at home because you have a duty to a prior commitment. You come home specifically so that you can see your first and only child be born. And some midwife blocks you from coming into the delivery room. We ride at dawn for OP. We ride at dawn. Do you know how mad I would be? You cannot get that back. That is a once in a lifetime experience. You literally cannot get that back. Imagine if they never have another child. Even if they did have another child, it's still not the same. You still missed your child coming into the world because a hater. So he continues, so with my wife's support, I filed a formal complaint about the midwife and she ended up getting fired by the OB's office. My wife is naturally on my side, but some of our friends have said I was wrong to make such a big deal out of it and taking away the woman's livelihood. Was I the a-hole for reporting her, which caused her to lose her job? I'd like the perspective of people outside the situation. Absolutely not the a-hole. I know there are specific instances and the whole cancel culture thing is very prevalent. I do think sometimes people make mistakes. It's not always necessary to go after a person's job for a mistake that they made totally unrelated to the job. But then there are some instances where I think it is right to do it when things are unrelated to the job. Now, in this instance, she made a mistake that is directly related to her job. She abused her position of power within that job. So, yes, absolutely, he should have reported her. And it wasn't as if he was gunning for her to be fired, but that just ended up as a consequence of the complaint. But he absolutely had every right to file a formal complaint, because if she did this to him and his wife, she could potentially be doing this to other couples. And that's absolutely not right, absolutely not fair. She definitely needs to learn a lesson. If she was worried about her livelihood, she should have thought of that when she blocked a father from seeing his child be born. So he does have a couple of edits, but before that, I'll read the relevant comments. So, first one, F that. Anyone that says you're the a-hole is not your friend or family, and they can kick rocks. That midwife was out of line. How dare she? I wish there was some way to give you back those moments. It's so unfair and unnecessary. I don't understand why people need to be so mean. OP responded, aside from being mad about my wife having to go through it all alone, I'm mad that I wasn't the first one to hold my daughter. Our plan was for me to hold her first, then my wife, then whichever grandma won the coin toss. And yeah, the grandmas both decided to leave it up to either a coin toss or rock, paper, scissors. My wife and baby are now doing great. My wife had a rough recovery for the first month or so, but the baby was and is perfect. She's 9 weeks now, and I'm in love. I can't wait to get home every day and see both of them. Another comment, that stuff could have gotten you court-martialed. No? What the midwife did was malicious and dangerous to you and your family. She deserves to be fired and worse. OP responded, if it had been a military hospital, I would have been investigated for sure. Nothing would have been found, but it would have had career implications for sure. Someone else, it sounds like the jokes set her off. Then she started power tripping. Midwives can act that way. I would file a complaint with the Board of Nursing and whatever licensing board midwives go through. Have some fun with it. Maybe even get an attorney. One thing we already know is the medical group won't stand behind her. I doubt the hospital will either. Go get her. OP responded, my wife was laughing at the jokes, so she should have known we were just having fun. We never found out the gender beforehand, so we had a running joke where we both suggested outlandish names for either gender. I had a long list that I would pull from when she had a particularly painful contraction. My wife labored without pain meds, and I think she's amazing for doing that. I would have wanted all the drugs if I were having a baby. Another comment, it sounds like the civilian hospital is in a military community also, so she should be somewhat acquainted with deployments and whatnot. No, not the a-hole. You sound like a good husband who wanted to support his wife. To be denied entry because she had some power trip is disgusting, and she deserved to be fired. I hope you received an apology from the OB. OP responded, the OB was so apologetic. She assumed I had to leave the room for some reason and just didn't make it back in time. From the time my wife was determined to be ready to push to when our daughter was born was only 15 minutes. My wife is an absolute rock star and pushed for all she was worth. So the baby came quickly. It wasn't until after that the OB learned I was locked out of the unit along with both moms. I don't blame the OB at all. Another comment, that midwife is awful and deserved to be fired. Don't feel bad for a freaking second. She assumed you were harmful and ruined a very delicate, vulnerable, and special moment for all of you. What was her excuse to not let in her mom? Was her mom suddenly harmful too? OP responded, according to the OB, she implied she thinks all military members harm their spouses, so she spoke up when my wife wouldn't for herself. But she had no answer for not letting my mother-in-law in. I wouldn't have been as upset if at least one of the moms was there, but she made sure no one was, and that hurts me because my wife deserved to be supported. And one last comment, did your wife say anything after it was all over to her? or anyone for that matter from the birth team or hospital before you filed? Opie said, she said she fell asleep shortly after the birth because she was exhausted, and I totally understand that. Then she woke up about 45 minutes later and asked the nurses if they knew where I was, which is when one of them told her the midwife said no one was to be let in per my wife's request. She panicked for a minute and asked for her phone on the table, and that's when she saw all my missed calls. Most of the nurses were apologetic and said they had worked with the midwife for a long time and didn't have a reason not to believe her. That's just, she deserves it all. She deserves everything that's coming to her. So his edits, edit 1, I took some advice and contacted JAG military lawyers to meet with an attorney about taking further steps. I have a meeting scheduled for Monday afternoon to discuss what can and should be done to ensure this doesn't happen to anyone else in the future. Thanks to everyone who offered support. And screw those who DM'd me to tell me I'm garbage for being in the military and I deserve to die because they think I harmed my wife. You all have a place saved in hell. That's crazy. That's crazy to say to somebody. Edit 2, since some people are so caught up on me paying for my mother-in-law's cab and the jokes I was making with my wife, I'll clear it up. I made jokes because she asked me to distract her from the pain by making her laugh. We were both making jokes, not just me. I also paid for my mother-in-law's cab because my wife told me to make sure I went down and paid, and also because it was the right thing to do since she didn't choose to take the cab. That was my choice since it was last minute. So then we do have a short update that was 6 days later, August 27th, 2024. He says, we met with the JAG attorney on Monday, and it seems like I have a good case for going after her license, as well as a possible defamation lawsuit. She's a certified nurse midwife, so she has a license that can be revoked or suspended. I'm not convinced it needs to be revoked altogether, but I do think she should be suspended for a while and forced to get more training in her field. The attorney JAG assigned to me is a parent herself and seemed genuinely appalled that someone would have to miss the birth of their child because a member of the medical staff used their influence to deny entry back into the maternity wing, especially when it's for a made-up reason that could have gotten me in a lot of trouble with the Navy. Right, all of that. I agree. I don't know about a full-out revocation of the license, but definitely a suspension. So at least if she doesn't learn from her mistakes this time and then does something like that again, okay, then yeah, revoke it. But He says, my wife was able to come with me to the meeting and had a brief conversation alone with the JAG. On the drive home, she told me what they spoke about, and basically, the attorney just needed to confirm that everything the midwife said about me being harmful was false and unfounded. When my wife told her I have never and would never lay a hand on her or my child, she asked if my wife felt any sort of emotional distress about me not being there for the birth. She confirmed that she does, and that's when it was decided that we would try to build a case for more than just possible medical malpractice. We don't care about any monetary gain. If we are awarded anything, it will go into an educational account for our daughter or be donated to charity. We are in agreement that the midwife should have to answer for what she did, though. She took away a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me. Even if we have more children, I'll never get back the lost experience of not seeing my firstborn come into the world. So that's where things stand right now. Any further updates will most likely be a long way off since there's going to be pending litigation soon. Thank you to almost everyone who commented and offered encouragement. It gave me the push I needed to seek out a legal remedy for the situation. My wife and I are truly thankful. That's crazy. That is just crazy. And now I understand, like, especially when you work in the healthcare field, if you see certain things, you are a mandated, I think it's mandated reporter or mandatory reporter, something like that. So you have to like report things that you might see, etc. But if you're using your prejudice against a certain group of people to cloud your judgment about these things, presumably she never went to the wife to even ask her like, hey, are you sure? Like, when he went to go pay for the cab, that would have been a perfect time to ask the wife. Well, maybe not perfect because she was in labor, but she maybe could have tried to ask in that moment, like, hey, if he's about to come back, is that okay? Like, are you fine with that? She took it upon herself to block that woman's husband and mother from coming in to witness the birth. So she had to be there all alone with her and the midwife and the care team. That's crazy. All because she thinks that military men are harmful. Let's go to the next story. This one is titled, Am I the A-hole for telling my sister I won't be her surrogate? Content warning for mention of not being able to carry a pregnancy to term. So the original was posted September 24th, 2024. It says, excuse my errors and etiquette. I'm not a frequent to Reddit. My friend suggested I use her throwaway account to make this post, so please be gentle with me as much as strangers on the internet can be. I, Celeste, 30 female, have an identical twin sister. We'll call her Stacy for the sake of the story. Our mother unfortunately passed in child labor and we were raised by our father. Stacy has been married to Jeff for 8 years. I have been in a relationship with Mike for 3 years now. One thing I've always known about my sister is that she wanted to be a mom. Even when we were children, she was always thinking about wedding ideas, nursery themes, baby names, etc. I was always more focused on books and having fun. I am now a flight attendant. I am also attempting to become a published author. My sister has not worked ever, honestly. When we graduated high school, we went straight to college. She met her boyfriend in college, and once she graduated, became a stay-at-home girlfriend until she became his wife. I have known for a while that my sister has been attempting to become pregnant unsuccessfully. She has experienced the inability to carry a pregnancy to term and has been unable to become pregnant again after thousands and thousands of dollars spent on IVF and pretty much anything they could do because she wanted to experience pregnancy. After 5 years of no success, they have started to discuss other options. My sister isn't interested in adoption and is very adamant on having a child that has both of their DNA, her words, not mine. About 3 weeks ago, she came to my house and we were hanging out as we usually do, just chatting and watching Modern Family. She told me she had a serious question and needed to ask me while she still had her nerves. It scared me, but she asked if I could be her surrogate. I was frozen for a second and asked what she meant. She told me that I know what a surrogate was. She needed me to be her surrogate. I expressed that she knew that I wasn't interested in having children. This could definitely be due to how we came into the world, but I'll be honest and say I have never found the thought of having children appealing in any way. I told her that I would have zero issue with donating my eggs to her. However many she needed, she could have them all, but I could not carry her child. Upon hearing that, she became so angry. Her face was so red and she was just yelling about how it's obvious how jealous and hateful I am because this is a small task. When I first read that, small task, having a baby, being pregnant is literally like one of the biggest tasks that anyone can do physically. So that's an interesting way to put it. Opie said, I didn't want to bring it to her attention that she has always spoke about having more than 4 kids. Would the expectation be for me to do this every time? I don't know. I'm starting to feel so bad. She ended up telling me that if I couldn't do this one thing for her, how could I ever call myself her sister? That's being a bit dramatic. She broke a picture of us I have sitting on my mantle and stormed out. Since then, she's only texted me pictures of her diaries from when we were kids and all of her vision boards saying that I'm stopping her from creating a family for no reason and to think about the bigger picture. My boyfriend refuses to give me advice, saying that it's my sister and he doesn't feel comfortable attempting to sway me in either direction because it's such a touchy subject. Honestly, this is the longest I've ever gone without communicating with my sister, and I am seriously on the verge of giving in. TLDR, am I the a-hole for not wanting to be a surrogate for my identical twin sister? Bruh, not the a-hole. Being that I also am an identical twin sister and I also do not want to ever be pregnant or have kids, I know that my sister would never come to me and ask me to do this. So my immediate thought when I was reading this is like, where is this coming from? Where is this disconnect coming from? Because I just can't see this type of interaction happening between identical twins who grew up together. Something about it was just off to me. I originally was thinking that it was one thing. I originally was thinking like, oh, maybe the sister became spoiled because after she graduated college, she never really had to work. Her boyfriend has basically been taking care of her. She was a stay-at-home girlfriend. Now she's a stay-at-home wife. So she just been used to like being told yes all the time. Now, I won't confirm or deny if I was right, but we'll see later on in the story. Let's read some comments, and then she has an edit. So the first comment, most doctors would refuse to allow you to be a surrogate as you've not previously had children. She'll be hard-pressed to find one that would. Not to mention, she's asking her sister to sacrifice her body and potentially her life to fulfill her dream. That's not fair at all. If she can afford IVF, she can afford a surrogate, not the a-hole. Another person I'd also add that her losing her temper in this way screams that she's not stable enough to enter this sort of relationship with, not the a-hole. Someone else says she did it to manipulate her sister. If she has a kid, she'll manipulate its whole life to match her vision boards. And one more says, not the a-hole. You are not the a-hole for refusing to be a surrogate for your sister. It's your body and you have the right to decide what you do with it. Your sister's reaction is unreasonable and manipulative, and you shouldn't feel pressured into doing something you're not comfortable with. So the edit that she had says, edit, I am reading all the comments and I want to say thank you so much. I feel so much better knowing I'm not the villain, but I would be lying if I said I'm not leaning towards just doing it. This disconnect with my sister brings me immense discomfort in ways I cannot verbally express, but I see two frequent questions I want to answer to hopefully get different answers. Money. My mother did not die of natural causes. It was provider error. My father sued the hospital and my sister and I have sizable trusts with that money. So money is not an issue for either of us, and her husband is financially well off as well. So not working for 9 months or paying for the egg retrieval process, etc., isn't an issue in any way. It's more so her stubbornness for the baby to share our DNA and for one of us to be carrying it. Another question was, since we're identical, if she can't have a baby, how can I? Her lack of being able to have a child is due to a car accident we were in, which is also the source of being unable to carry the child to term that she experienced. Due to her being in the front seat with our father, they took the brunt of the crash, unfortunately. Her body is now unable to carry a child, and she has had extreme complications with egg retrieval. I'm not sure about the details of how that has gone wrong, just that it is not working and not an option. It is harder to get her to discuss non-viable options so I can get a better understanding. Doctors will not allow me to be a surrogate due to me not having a child. Thank you so much for this information. We have family dinner this upcoming Thursday because we always watch football with our dads and significant others, and I'm sure this topic will come up if she decides to attend. I'm hoping I can bring this up to her. So then my commentary to that was the sister is going to find a way to get around the whole doctor, if you didn't have a kid already, you can't be a surrogate thing. I was thinking, she would probably be like, oh, we don't need to, go through the doctor. I can just give you the turkey baster. We could just do a little DIY, because we have the same DNA, so it won't really matter, like, if we don't do it or not, da, 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 da. So we'll see. We'll see whether or not that assumption was also true. So I'll go to the update that was 2 days later. She says, so I promised an update tomorrow, but my dad actually ended up calling me while I was hanging out and told me to come over for dinner yesterday night so we could talk. I want to start by saying thank you so much for all the comments and advice. Some of you were jerks to not only me, but my sister and boyfriend as well. I still appreciate the help. I didn't even ask about what when my dad called. I figured he had spoken to Stacy. Based on comments, I know you guys won't be happy, but I spoke with my boyfriend about where his head was if I were to go forward with it. He told me that he loved me and would support me through any and everything, but he would not continue to sit by while my sister made me feel like trash, and if I was doing this under coercion, he would not be able to support me, which I honestly completely understand. When we went over to my dad's for dinner, my sister and brother-in-law were already there. I spoke to them both when we walked in, but only my sister replied. My brother-in-law gave me the most disgusting look and greeted my boyfriend only. That's weird. My dad sat us down at the table, and there was just this awkward silence and tension I could cut with a butcher knife. He said, "Somebody talk. We need to get this resolved before the game tomorrow night." My dad loves football, LOL. I started off the conversation by telling her that I did some research, and atop of my initial concerns, I now had a few more and needed to know exactly what she needed from me. I first asked her what being a surrogate would look like. She just said, "Are you agreeing to it?" When I told her no, I just needed more details, she broke down crying. I asked her if she knew that a doctor would deny me from being a surrogate, given that I've never successfully carried a child to term, and she said she knew that and she would just send my brother-in-law and I to a quote-unquote center of excellence. We can pretend we're a couple, and once I'm successfully inseminated, then I would request a transfer from that provider to her OBGYN for the continuation of care. My father intervened and said that asking me to do something a doctor wouldn't sign off on was a terrible way to attempt to begin motherhood. You could tell he wasn't on board with any of it, but didn't want to pick a side. He asked her why she was so uncomfortable with the idea of a surrogate, and that's when my brother-in-law interjected and said, "Don't try to berate my wife with these stupid questions. Talk to your selfish bee of a daughter about why she can't help her sister." That immediately shifted the mood. My boyfriend started to yell at him for calling me a bee. My dad told him he could not disrespect his daughters in his home. Everything just went up in flames. My sister was crying, asking me to do her this favor, practically begging. I told her that if I could trade places with her, I would, but I was scared and I just didn't want to die. I think that was the first time I had said that out loud ever. We couldn't get more solved after that. My dad asked my brother-in-law to leave because he couldn't control himself and refused to apologize. When he was walking out, my sister told him she would meet him in the car and asked me to come and talk to her on the porch, just the two of us. I went out with her and she apologized for her husband calling me a bee, said that they were just on edge and it's been stressful. I told her that she shouldn't apologize for him and that we'd figure something out. She asked me to reconsider and just kept saying, "You don't get it. You don't understand." When I pressured her for more, she admitted that her in laws made a cruel joke at one of their dinners recently about how she was an unaliver, referring to the child she lost. How cruel that's not a joke. That's not a joke at all. You have to be a different kind of person to make that comment. OP continued, she said she asked him why he didn't stand up for her when they made the joke, and he said because it was true. He made some weird comments about her not being able to make up for it and how he was so excited to see what quote unquote their child would look like, and how he would never be able to look into a child and see pieces of them both. So she had the idea of me carrying the child, and he was super on board. But the way she said it was like he planted a seed, and she seems to believe it was her idea. She said she hadn't seen him that excited since the baby, and she just needed my help to get everything back to normal. I tried to explain to her that nothing would ever be normal again, and that what she was trying to do was the wrong thing. But he just started blaring the horn, rushing her to the car, and she said she'd call me later. I feel like I may lose my sister, but I now am not even willing to donate my eggs for her to have a baby with him. I took your guys' advice and looked up the egg donation process, and wow, not at all what I expected. I want her to divorce him. I am never going to help her procreate with that man. I genuinely think I'd be a surrogate for her to be a single mom before I'd ever allow her to place his child in me or take my eggs to even create a child with him. I had no clue that his family was pushing so much guilt onto her. I have literally been jumping at my phone every time it rings because I know she'll be calling soon and I'll have to tell her that. I'm terrified I'll lose my sister, but I can't and won't do this. Probably won't update anymore, but thanks for all the help. I'll probably create my own Reddit now because I'm kind of obsessed with the site. LOL, smiley face. Yeah, so originally I was thinking like, oh, the sister is probably spoiled and entitled. She's never been told no, etc., etc. But now seeing the update, it's very clear that it's the husband who's the problem. And low key, when he made her a stay at home girlfriend, quote unquote, then made her a stay at home wife, that might have been like kind of a control thing from the start. So it sounds like she's in a harmful relationship and she needs to get out. She don't need to have any children with this man whatsoever. Someone said, what a manipulative a-hole he is. Your sister should divorce and stay away from her in-laws. No wonder that man is that way. He needs therapy ASAP. Someone else said, OP showing some healthy backbone, about which there was some doubt in the first post. Assuming this is real, it's a super stressful situation, but she appears to be rising to the occasion. A-holes seems like an inadequate word to describe her sister's husband and his family. And someone else, wow, can't believe her own husband called her an unaliver for being unable to carry a pregnancy to term. I hope she wakes up from the brainwashing. Yeah, I thought that was just crazy. And then to add even more context, I saw a comment on OP's page. It says, I did tell my dad what she said when I went back inside. He didn't seem surprised, assuming after she spoke with her sister on the porch. She says, he said that he went to dinner with her in-laws per her request, and he saw the change in how they treated her. He said that, same as me, he didn't know how bad it was. I know he did reach out to her and tell her that my brother-in-law would no longer be welcome back until he apologizes to me. He's hoping that she'll still come over tonight and we can talk to her together without his presence. This is all super new territory for us. We were under the impression that she was in a happy, loving relationship. We aren't idiots and knew the loss of their child did shake their relationship, but I could not have imagined this in my wildest dreams. Brother-in-law has always been so cool. I used to see him like an annoying brother. Now I see he's emotionally harmful and extremely manipulative. She also responded to someone else and said, I genuinely think this is a request he is making and she is just wanting to oblige him. When I or our dad try to press her on why it has to be me, the words immediately start fumbling, and it always just results right back to begging and, can you just do it? So yeah, it sounds like sis need to get out before she has kids, because that's going to make it even worse. But she's definitely in the trenches, and I hope she's able to get out of that situation. There are no additional updates. So before we go to the palette cleanser, just make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And the palette cleanser is from the r/Petty Revenge subreddit. The title is Pettiness at the Ferrari Museum. It says, a lovely commenter suggested this for here. Today, I was lucky enough to visit Museum Ferrari Maranello. Cars aren't really my thing, but my aunt did not want to go alone. Many cars, many photos, not too crowded, generally people being polite and not stepping into photos being taken, all very respectful. Until the last car didn't seem a particularly special one compared to how others were displayed. I'm politely standing next to an older lady taking a photo of her husband next to the car. Behind him and facing the other direction was my aunt. I was about to alert her that she was in their frame when he loudly says in French, I don't want the fat cow in my photo. Well, guess who speaks French? I marched over, planted myself right behind him, and started reading every display on the walls. Eventually, he braved asking me to move. I smiled politely and stated in French, no thank you, and kept reading. Eventually, people were staring. It was a standoff. And when one woman, politely, not staff, alerted me, I calmly stated, oh, I'm aware. He called my aunt a fat cow. A few people chuckled and entered the frame. I'm stubborn to a fault, so I was quite happy to wait him out reading away. Eventually, they huffed off, and as soon as they left the room, I moved for everyone else to take photos. My aunt found it funny, and if he had only asked, she would have happily moved. She was unaware and doesn't speak French. I hope that old fart gets diarrhea for the rest of his holiday. I think that was good petty revenge. Harmless, just being a nuisance. Nobody really, gets hurt. But just the audacity of someone being that mean, just like as a knee-jerk reaction. Why would you say that about somebody? A fat cow, really? Like, you could just ask them to move or wait. Many people, when they're at exhibits like this, they just wait for the person to see what they're looking at, and then they get their turn to take a photo. It's really not that serious. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.